Hi everyone, this is Jillian from Jewish Workshops. It is a pleasure to be joining all of you today, and we are extremely privileged to have Rabbi Manis Friedman on the line. Before we get started, I'd love to see who's joining us and where you're from. So if you can go to your question box and put your name and where you're from, I would love to be able to welcome you. Welcome, Yehudis from Paris. And Jeremy from Orlando. Welcome Clara from Israel and Mitch from Manhattan. Jennifer from Houston, Elizabeth from Toronto, Harry from New Jersey. Welcome. Oh my goodness, names are coming in so quickly. Let me see if I can get all of these. Liliana, welcome from Illinois, and Panna from Ireland. Nice to see you. Tandy from Houston, Yael from Bolivia. Welcome. Emery from Georgia, Rebecca from Brooklyn, Amanda from Baltimore, welcome. Rachel from Houston, and Bela from Hollywood, Florida. Michal from Israel, Glenn from Long Island, Gila from Israel, Kristen from Flint, welcome. Matt from New Orleans, Gabriella from Hungary, Judith from Michigan, Rose from Manchester, Sharon from South Carolina, Daniel from Toronto, Diana from California, welcome, welcome. Menachem from New York, Jackie from Australia, Moshe from London, Elaine from Los Angeles, Leslie from Nevada, welcome. Paul from Louisiana, and Jeff from Columbus, Ohio, Golda from Florida, Emily from Ohio, Joelle from Montreal. There are so many people that continue to flood the lines. It's wonderful to have all of you here from all over the world. I would love to be able to get to everyone. I just could be here all day. Let me just get to a few others. Welcome Jessica from Pensacola, and Bernard from Montreal, Marianne from Denmark, and Audrey from Ohio, Shawnee from New York. Welcome, welcome everyone. This is absolutely incredible to see all the places from across the globe being represented here today. So we are going to hit capacity soon. Please don't leave in the middle. I don't want you to be locked out. If you're having any technical troubles, just come back to your question box and let me know. I will try to help you out with any of those. Over the last 3 years, Jewish Workshops has offered a variety of programs on marriage, relationships, personal growth and introspection, emotional and mental well-being, and much more. But we haven't focused on the challenges of low self-esteem and how it affects our day-to-day lives, which is why we reached out to world-renowned philosopher, author, and counselor, Rabbi Friedman. Thankfully, he agreed to join us once again to introduce to us today his unique insights and perspective on the true meaning of self-esteem. Plus, make sure to stay on the line until the very end to hear about this special opportunity to join Rabbi Friedman for a full live online program at an additional discounted rate just for attending today. It is my supreme honor to be hosting Rabbi Friedman. Rabbi Friedman is a world-renowned author, counselor, lecturer, and philosopher who uses ancient wisdom and modern wit as he captivates audiences around the world. Over 150,000 copies of his provocative yet entertaining tapes, both audio and video, have been sold, and his widely praised book, Doesn't Anyone Blush Anymore, is in its 4th printing. Rabbi Friedman has also been featured internationally in over 200 print articles and interviewed on more than 50 television and radio talk shows. Rabbi Friedman, we are so grateful that you are joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and pass the microphone over to you. How are you?
Thank God. Thank God. Very excited.
Great. Welcome. Let's get started.
We have a really important message here, and I think it's time, perfect time, when the world is really curious and facing the challenge of the self, good image, high image, low image. This is really very, very timely and very necessary. And I think we're going to gain a lot from it. So it's exciting. The question is, what in the world do we mean when we say self-image? Now, we all know it's very hard to be objective about yourself. When something good happens, when we succeed, we tend to exaggerate. All of a sudden, we're wonderful, we're talented, we're capable, we can do anything. And then when we have a little bad news or a little disappointment or some failure, then we overreact and we go to the opposite extreme. I'm worthless. I'm no good. I'll never amount to anything. I got to change my job. I got to change my marriage. I got to change my location. I got to change everything. I'm no good. Very hard to maintain a balanced opinion of self. If we go back, way back to the beginning, when Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, ate from the tree of knowledge, good and evil, that's when the problem began. Because this knowledge is good and evil. And what is that knowledge? Self-aware. When they became self-aware after eating from the tree, they had both the best of all things and the worst of all things. That is the beginning of all good, and it's the beginning of all bad. When we have a self-image, it is the healthiest thing. A person who doesn't know himself, a person who is not aware, conscious of themselves, is basically not a human being. They're fetuses. They haven't developed a personality. And that's really not good. We have to have a self. Like, for example, if I have a self, if I'm self-aware, if I'm conscious of myself, then I know who I am, which enables me to know who you are. If I don't have a self-awareness, if I don't have a definition for myself, a border within which I exist, then I will effortlessly, innocently violate your border, because I don't have a sense of borders. So if I don't know who I am, I don't know where you begin. Also, if I don't have a sense of self, then what value and what meaning would the words "I love you" have? If I don't have a self, either because of my outgoing nature, I will love everybody, which means I don't love anybody, or I will love nobody, which means I don't love anybody. So if I don't have a self, I have nothing to give, nothing of any value. People say, what is the purpose of my life? What am I doing here? Where does that question come from? What creates that question? And what lies at the heart of it? What am I here for? Why do I exist? What is my life all about? Is basically a question of, who am I? What is this self? Now, even if we're confused, I have no idea who I am. I have no idea how to describe myself, define myself. That doesn't mean that I don't have a self. And that's why it's a problem. I do have a self, and I can't get my head around it. I can't put it into words. I can't define it. I can't get a grasp on who I am. But I am. There is a self. I am self-aware. I am conscious of myself. I like to use this example. Children, babies, if they don't have sides to their crib, might fall out of bed. When's the last time you fell out of bed? You know, when you were deep asleep, you didn't know what was going on. How come you didn't roll off the bed? Now, it's been a while. Why don't we roll off the bed? It's because we're self-conscious, even when we're sleeping. Even when asleep, I am conscious of myself. I am protective of myself. I am precious to myself, and I will not roll off the bed and hurt myself. So we have a very strong sense of self. Now the question is, this self is a high self or a low self? So what happens is that so many things attack this self because it's vulnerable. By its very nature, our self, the definition of who we are and what we are individually, is vulnerable. It's fragile. And so all sorts of things can devastate it. In both directions, by the way. A compliment can devastate my self-image because now I think I'm the greatest. And so my self-image is devastated because I'm exaggerating it beyond what's real and true. It can also be demolished by criticism, where I overreact and decide that I am worthless and what I do doesn't matter, and so I give up and I become depressed. Either way, the self has been damaged, because a healthy self is a balanced self, a neutral self, which we'll talk about a lot because there's so much to that. Let's share something really poetic and beautiful. God said, "Let there be," and there was. When God says, "Let there be," without giving much detail, for example, "Let there be light," doesn't say what the light does, doesn't say what the light is. Let there be light, and there was light, which is very different from the other utterances with which God created the world. Like, for example, let the earth give forth vegetation in its various forms, and they should have a seed within them so that they can reproduce. A lot of details. When God says, let there be, the result that is created is a mineral. Because what is a mineral? Something that is. It just is. It exists. God said, let there be, and there be. So you have a stone, you have water, you have air, you have light. All of these things just are. They are what they are, and there isn't much more to say about them. Those are the minerals of the earth, of creation. Then there's the vegetation. Plants. Plants come with color, sometimes beautiful color. Plants come with scent, aroma. They smell delicious. Plants grow. They blossom. There's some movement there. And in general, plants beautify the planet. Where does that come from? When God said, let there be light, the words themselves create a being, a thing. But what about the pleasure that God has in creating the world? That pleasure shows up in vegetables. I don't mean lunch vegetables, in the vegetation of the world. So all plants are creations that enjoy their existence. There's a pleasure in their existence. And that pleasure shows up in the pleasant smell and in the beautiful color and in the growth. There's a purpose for which God creates the world. That purposefulness shows up in the animal world. And that's why animals will fight to survive. So not only do they have an existence like minerals, not only do they have energy and pleasure like a vegetable, but they even have a determination to live. They are grateful for their existence, because their existence means something to them beyond generic pleasure. And so they'll defend themselves, they'll defend their territory, they'll defend their brood, their pride. So we might say like this. A mineral, though things like rocks, are basically a statement of existence. The rock is basically the statement. He said and there was. So the rock proclaims its existence. I am. The vegetable enjoys its existence, and so it actually sings. The song of creation is the vegetation in the world. The harmony. Animals are actually grateful. They appreciate their own existence, their life. So they are more alive than the vegetable and certainly more than the mineral. Now we come to the human being. The mineral, when allowed to remain intact, is perfectly at peace and its existence is fulfilled. It's what it's meant to be. A vegetable or a plant or a tree or a garden that gets sunshine and it gets rain and it gets some nutrients from the earth, it is perfectly happy, it is content, it is a healthy and free vegetation. An animal that is allowed to be safe from intrusion, safe from predators, is a perfectly happy animal. And it will sing God's praises in gratitude for its existence. What they all have in common is this. They are what they were created to be, and they are content being it. The vegetable likes being a vegetable, the mineral likes being a mineral, and the animal loves being an animal. And that's why they never deviate. They're always true to their created and given nature. But the human being is different. The human being, by nature, and we have to really explain this in the course of our conversations, until we get this really clear in our heads, and it'll make such a difference in our lives. Here's the definition. A human being is never content being human. That is the nature of the human being. That's what distinguishes us from the animal. And that's why human beings are never content to be whatever they were born to be. We want to contribute something beyond what we were given. So if I was created human, well, then that's not good enough. What am I accomplishing? What am I contributing? What do I have that I can claim as mine? What goes to my credit? The fact that I'm human, that's what I was given. That's the default position. Where do we go from there? So the human being, created human, is by his very nature not content being human. So a human being is not content being human. We must feel like we've accomplished something, we've done something, we've grown beyond our nature and not simply content to be. So a human being who says, if you just leave me alone, I don't need anybody, I don't need anything, don't disturb me and I'll be fine. That's the mineral in you that is speaking. As long as nothing demolishes me, as long as nothing causes me to decompose, I'm a healthy mineral. The person who says, I love life, I wake up in the morning and I see the sunset, the sunrise, and in the evening I see the sunset, and that's it. That's my life. That's a very healthy vegetable. And the person who says, I've got my own place, I'm secure, I feel safe, as long as nobody attacks me, I won't attack anybody else, live and let live, and I will be happy. That's a content animal. When do we start being human? So here's where we become complex. I have a self. I am what I am because I was created a certain way. Created, fashioned, formed. Every child comes into the world with baggage, with a personality, with moods, with sensitivities. It's not a blank slate. In terms of virtue, we're a blank slate. We're innocent. But in terms of personality, in terms of strengths and weaknesses, we all are born with certain baggage. So we have a self, but we're not content with that. We're human beings. First of all, we want to know ourselves, which is an amazing thing. You can sit back and observe yourself as if you were someone else. Of course, you can be very objective in that observation because you are yourself. So this is where we start getting muddy. Am I better than the next guy? How do I compare with my sibling? Am I living up to my parents' expectation? Is what I am good enough? Should I change? What do I need to change? And how much? What will satisfy my need for growth? If I'm really smart, just naturally, I've been a brilliant little kid, and now I'm growing up and I'm reading a lot of books and I'm taking a lot of courses and I'm graduating all sorts of things, and I'm just getting smarter and smarter and smarter and more information. Is this the growth that will make me human? Or was I born with intelligence and I'm just taking the path of least resistance? So should I be proud of the fact that I'm intelligent? Should I be content? Or do I need to be something completely different? Do I need to be more romantic? Do I need to be more emotional? Do I need to be more sensitive? Is my entire approach wrong? Is my whole personality useless? That's where we get confused. And then people come along and say, why can't you be more like your brother? Why do you have to be like your mother? Why can't you? How do we know? How do I know whether I'm on the right path or not? The right path about myself. Am I what I'm supposed to be? Now, no other creature in the universe ever asks itself that question. Animals don't ask themselves, vegetables don't, angels don't ask themselves. Every angel is what it is. There's the angel of kindness, it's kindness. The angel of judgment is judgment. The angel of compassion is compassion. They're never confused about their self. We are, because the self is fluid, as it should be. Now, what happens with low self-image? In modern psychology, every problem is attributed to low self-image, which of course can't be true. Too pat, too simplistic. Everything is a low self-image. You need to be loved more, you need to be validated more, you need to be encouraged more, you need to be complimented more. You need to elevate your image and become or get a high self-image. Very, very painful when a person suffers from defeat. But let's look at this. Defeat means the self that I have developed, the self that I possess, is not good enough. Good enough for what? I don't know. Others tell me that myself is not good enough for them to accept, to be my friend, to include me in their lives. Sometimes I tell myself, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough because I'm not as good as that guy, the other guy. So I'm comparing myself, and I find myself wanting, failing. Sometimes it's not because I compare myself, but it's because I judge myself. I should have known better. I could have done better. I've only accomplished a little. I should have accomplished a lot. So let's clarify a few things. Number one, people who have a really high self-image are impossible. They have no friends. Nobody likes them. They're impossible to get along with. People who have severely low self-image are impossible. They're impossible to get along with. They have something in common. A person absorbed with themselves, positively or negatively, too much self. Let's make a distinction. I can have a very high self-image and yet have no confidence at all. Because a high self-image doesn't mean I'm good at math, or I'm a great builder, or I'm a great artist. Good self-image means I'm valid. I'm precious. No, I'm not good at art. No, I'm not good at math. I'm not good at history. Don't know much about history. But hey, I'm a great guy. So I have a very high self-image. I have no confidence. So confidence or self-confidence and self-image are completely separate and independent things. There are people who have very high self-confidence. Anything that you can mention, they're good at. Whatever has to happen, they can do it. And they can, and they can. But they have such a low self-image, which means no matter how much they accomplish in actions, in productivity, no matter how talented they are, no matter how many things they're good at, the self is not good. And sometimes all that achievement is a mask. They hide behind it as if that gives them validity, but it really doesn't. So deep down inside, the self is low while the confidence is high. So let's not confuse the two. The painful thing about a low self-image is that it discourages growth. It discourages movement. You get stuck. That really is the tragedy. I don't really care whether I have a high self-image or a low self-image. If I can function, if I can accomplish, if I can do what I need to do, then it really doesn't matter much. So what do you think about yourself? I don't know. Kind of busy. Doing good stuff. The reason the low self-image is so destructive is because it paralyzes, it discourages, and you end up not doing, not accomplishing. And that's totally unacceptable. The high self-image is somewhat better in that it doesn't stop you from accomplishing. It might even encourage you to accomplish. It might even help you accomplish more. Let's put it this way. There are rich kids and there are poor kids. Now, before television confused everybody and created this melting pot where poor kids, literally genuinely poor, don't know it because they watch television and they're living vicariously in mansions and they're driving fancy cars and so on. So we don't express the reality of our standing or of our social condition. But at least in principle, let's think about this. A child who is wealthy has a very high acceptance of self, a very high opinion of self. The child who is wealthy is capable of thinking big, broad-minded. Child who is rich is also somewhat smug and enjoys naturally, unless taught otherwise, but by nature, the rich kid enjoys the misery of the poor kid and may even be tempted to add to it. So they have a bit of a cruel streak, an insensitivity. Children in a third world country, by nature, are not very accepting of self. They don't have strong opinion. They're really, what is the word, discouraged or narrow in their thinking, small-minded, and they're humble. They're sensitive. That's what wealth or poverty does to people by nature. Now, having a good self-acceptance, having a high opinion, trusting one's opinion, that's a very healthy thing. It's what makes you a human being. But if it's abused, it is horrible. If it's used properly, it can take you to some very, very good places, because every virtue that you decide you want, you can attain, because you have that confidence. You have that freedom because you're rich. And so in your mind, nothing is impossible. You can achieve that too. So a child who has a high self-image can easily achieve greatness because they're free to do so. But if they're not trying to achieve greatness, if they're simply using their wealth or their good self-image, high self-image, to lord it over others and take advantage of others, it becomes a swamp of ugliness. On the other hand, the poor child who has a low self-image, meaning he can't accept himself readily, he has to prove himself, he doesn't expect his opinion to be heard. After all, who is he? He is narrow in his thinking, and he's humble. Generally, that's a good moral place to be. But if it discourages growth and learning, then it becomes horrible. So we can't dismiss completely the value of the high self-image or the virtue of the low self-image. They both have something positive. Both can be abused. Both can be destructive. Both can be positive and beautiful. The poor child who uses his humility can accomplish great things. Sometimes things that the rich kid cannot accomplish at all, will never. So how do we salvage, how do we put to good use these native qualities so that we remain ourselves, not trying to be somebody else, and yet at the same time achieve true growth, real progress, not just maintain ourselves in the world? Where does guilt come in? Nazi philosophy basically argued that guilt is a disease introduced into the world by Jews. Jews introduced this idea that even if you can, and even if you want, and even if it'll make you happy, maybe you shouldn't, because it's not right. That's guilt. That's conscience. And they argued that a human being in a natural, healthy state is barbaric, a barbarian. A barbarian means not ignorant, not a caveman. Barbarian means what I want, what I feel, is what I do, and it's what I express. So if you're getting on my nerves and you don't behave yourself and you're a nuisance, then I kill you and I go back to my dinner. Without conscience. If I want to become an artist, if I want to be a composer, I appreciate good music, I appreciate the fine arts, that's all fine, as long as it doesn't cripple me and not allow me to be natural, barbaric, without conscience. So what does guilt do to our self-image? Again, can you imagine if human beings never felt any guilt? Can you imagine what kind of monsters we would be if we didn't have a conscience? I mean, look at what kind of monsters we are with a conscience. So is guilt a good thing? Indispensable. But look at what guilt does to people. It's horrible. So what is the proper balance? What is healthy guilt and what is destructive guilt? So here again, guilt is not a good thing, but when used properly, it can be the greatest and the best thing. Why do we feel guilt? There is a natural, not religious, natural instinct in a human being that says, I ought to. I'm not sure what, but I have this instinct, I ought to. I ought to grow and be more than I am. I ought to achieve something in this life. I ought to contribute something to the world around me. I ought to return favor and be grateful for what I have. I ought to leave the world as clean as I found it. I ought to honor those who deserve respect. Where does this come from? Now, of course, the details come from Torah. The details come from the revelation at Sinai, where God told us to honor our parents. He also told us how. But the instinct to honor parents, this is our nature. And that's why if I honor my parents, I feel really good. If I don't honor my parents and I don't want to honor my parents, I feel guilty. Because there's a sense of should. So the Nazis were wrong. This conscience, this idealism was not invented by Jews or anybody else. It is the native condition of a healthy human being. The healthy human being has certain built-in ambitions, instincts that say, I'm not enough. Whatever I've accomplished, not enough. I could have done more, then I'm disappointed. Now, where does this come from? It comes from the fact that a human being by nature wants to be more than human, because we're supposed to be partners with God in creation, not simply the result of creation. And that's why we challenge the world, we explore the world, we break things open to see how they work. We want to get beyond the limits with which we are fashioned. That's noble. That's That's why we've had all the progress we have had. And because we don't pursue that properly, we don't have the progress that we could have had. And we eventually will have. So what is a self-image? Self-image means the opinion I hold about the self that I have. Two separate things. I am what I am. My self-image is simply the opinion that I hold about what I am. And in most cases, I don't even know who I am because I can't be objective. So if you ask me who I am, I will either exaggerate my faults and play the humble card, worthless me, blah, blah, or I will exaggerate my faults and I will say, I'm good. How am I? I'm good. You want a drink? No, thanks. I'm good. Are you really good? And I didn't ask you whether you were good or not. I just asked you if you're thirsty. What is this answer? Want to go to the park? No, I'm good. What is that? What is this need to constantly affirm my goodness when I'm not even asked, when that's not even the subject? So in summary, we are fascinated by ourselves. We have a self and we're fascinated. Wow, what am I? Look at that, I'm really good. Oh, look at that, I'm really bad. I'm the worst. No, I'm the best. This fascination with self, is that healthy? Before we get to whether I come to a conclusion that gives me high self-esteem or I come to the conclusion that gives me low self-esteem, what is with this fascination? So how do you like me now? Well, what do you think of me now? Is that really a good thing? We're going to explore that. We're going to explore something even more dramatic and more exciting. Do we need this self that we have? Is it important? If I'm good or bad, does it really make a difference? I mean, who cares? Who cares? You come to a therapist and you say, I'm really bothered by the fact that I don't communicate well. People don't understand me. Is that a problem? Really? Why? Well, I got to have a social life. Really? Why? Why not be an animal? If nobody's threatening me and I have what to eat, what's the problem? What is the problem? Now, if I'm being threatened, now I got to do something about that. But how often do people feel threatened when there's no real threat? Like when there were times back in the 30s where there were country clubs and places of business where no Jews were allowed. Was that a problem? That famous joke from Groucho Marx. He says, I would never belong to a country club that would accept me as a member. That's low self-image? Does it matter? There's a country club that will not accept you. So don't go there. What do you need a country club for anyway? But it disturbs us. Why won't they let me? Is there something wrong with me? What's the difference? Who cares? Why is this important? So we have to explore the assumptions that we're living with. Low self-image is not good. I can understand that up to a point. Beyond that point, who cares? Why is that important? In simple words, If there is something I am meant to be, and that is a cosmic truth, and it is an absolute necessity, and something is preventing me from getting there, then that's a serious problem. If there is no purpose for which I exist, if I am not meant to be anything at all, and I end up being nothing at all, why is that a problem? The only way we can recognize anything as problematic is if we have an appointment that we can't get to. And that appointment is real and important and valid and necessary and true. Then if I can't get there, I have a serious problem. So imagine a guy calls a doctor and says, I woke up this morning, my legs don't work. I can't walk. The first thing the doctor should ask is not, does it hurt on the left side, on the right side? Does it go up? Does it go down? The first question he should ask is, need to go anywhere? Not a good question. So imagine a guy calls a doctor and says, I can't walk. I can't walk. My legs don't work. And the doctor says, well, where do you need to go? And the guy says, actually, got no place to go. I don't need to go anywhere. I got no place to go. So the doctor should say, well, I'm fine. Don't even take 2 aspirin and don't call me in the morning. You're fine. You got no place to go and you can't go. So what's the problem? A person calls up with a panic and I can't breathe. Do you need to? Well, if I don't breathe, I'm going to die. Yeah. Is it something you're living for? Is your life necessary? Important? Valid? Significant? A person says, actually, I don't even know what I'm living for. Okay, so if you can't breathe, don't. You see, there's got to be an absolute in order for us to measure ourselves against. If I need to be somewhere, and that's really true, and that's really a reality, then if I can't get there, I know that I'm in trouble. If I can get there, I've got reason to be grateful. But if there is no such objective, if I have no appointment, I don't have to be anywhere at any time ever, then why is high self-image better than low self-image? What's the difference? The question with self-image is it helping you get there? Will high self-image help you get there? Will low self-image help you get there? Well, what's there? Where is there? If I don't know what there is, I don't know what it takes to get there. So if I don't know what my purpose in life is, how do I know whether I'm doing well or not? If I don't know what my purpose in life is, I will agonize over my progress, but I will be running in circles because I don't know what progress means. I don't know if I'm getting closer or further from the objective. I don't know if I'm getting warmer or I'm getting colder, as in the game. So it becomes really confusing. It becomes painful, embarrassing, depressing. Either way. There are kids who have a really high self-image in grade school. They get to high school and there are some really talented kids there compared to whom he's a total failure. He can't compete with these kids. So now he's devastated. His life is finished, shattered. And then there are kids who have a very low self-image in grade school. They get to high school, they realize they know a lot more than most of the kids there. Suddenly they have a high self-image. But this will flip-flop back and forth throughout life because we're not focused on the goal. If you're the smartest kid in high school, does that bring you closer to your goal in life? Maybe, maybe not. What's the goal in life? And if you make up your own goal, you say, well, my goal in life is to become a doctor. What if you change your mind? What if you are a doctor and you're not happy? So what does all this lead to? It basically says low self-image is very painful. Guilt is very painful. No confidence, very painful. But beyond the pain, is it really important? What if I would come to a person and say, you have low self-image? That's fine. That's fine. No harm. You're humble. You don't think you're much of a catch. You don't think you're anything special. That's beautiful. I like that. I like humble people. They're easy to talk to. You don't feel like you have to compete. So fine. Low self-image, great. Would that make it okay? High self-image. High self-image can be so destructive. The arrogant, selfish, narcissistic, terrible. So a kid who used to have a low self-image and was miserable, and then he has a high self-image, and now he's putting on a good show, but deep down inside he's still miserable. Because what's the difference? What's the difference? You're popular with the kids, with your peers. You're not popular with your peers. Which is worse? Which is worse? Arrogance or humility? Now, here's what we're going to learn. We're going to learn that a human being should be capable of peeling themselves away from themselves. A good self-image is not the opposite or a solution to a low self-image. A low self-image is not improved by replacing it with the child with a low self-image is not improved when you replace it with a high self-image, because it's two sides of the same coin. The self needs to be harnessed. High or low doesn't make a difference. What is the self and how do you use it in the way that it's meant to be? So it turns out that human psychology doesn't have the answer. If you don't introduce a divine imperative, you'll never figure this out. We'll go, the pendulum will swing from one extreme to another. Good self-image is the answer to everything. That'll become a problem, and then we're going to say humility will be the answer to all the problems. And then this is fruitless. So I guess we come to the conclusion that there are some spiritual realities that are indispensable to physical well-being. Isn't that amazing? We always thought that religious things, spiritual things, it's kind of like dessert. If you want, fine. If not, really, you don't need any of that. And if you get really too serious about that stuff, you're overdoing it. It's not that important. So if you like it, fine, but don't get crazy about it. It's the perks. It's not the necessities. You don't have to. It's not needed in the human condition. Some people seem to get some pleasure from it, which is fine, but particularly with Judaism, there's absolutely nothing in Judaism that isn't beneficial to the human condition, because the human condition is not so human. We need to be something more than human. And if we understand this, we will change the world. I think it's the future of psychology. This is where psychology needs to go. Don't tell me how deep my problem is. Get me beyond problem. Why do human beings have problem? Where is the self that is healthy enough to not have problem? Problem solving is only a band-aid. We haven't gone deep enough. Problem solving works up to a point. When issues become really serious, the problem solving methods don't work. Like Viktor Frankl said, there were those who knew their way around the camps. They thought they would survive on their wit, on their ability. But they were overwhelmed eventually. And that led him to the conclusion that to survive these impossible situations, you have to find meaning. There is no problem solving when the problems are that big. You have to be above the problem. You have to see something. You have to have a vision that takes you beyond the problem. And then you don't have to solve anything. You're above it. I don't mean detached from reality. That certainly doesn't work. So let's explore this. What are we really? What are we supposed to be? How do we know what we're supposed to be? And how do we get there? Because when we get there, we have really become something special. And all the problems that we seem to be crippled by are no longer crippling. That's what we need to talk about. That's why we're here. And this is coming from the most profound inner understanding of creation, of God, of the Jewish people, of human beings, of morality. If we go deep, we find great treasures. Superficially, we're just muddling our way through. So let's continue this conversation. There is so much wisdom in the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, in the teachings of Chabad, in the wisdom of the sages. We should benefit from all of this. It should not be kept secret. And like I said at the beginning, it seems to be really timely. Modern psychology has not produced healthy people. We're either too proud of ourselves or still confused. We're either narcissistic or depressed. We got to find something better. We will. So stay tuned. And we will get to the core of the issue. And it's beautiful. It's amazing. It's the future.
Thank you so much. I see people are already asking how they can continue and what it's going to all include. So thank you, Rabbi Friedman. Let me get to some of these questions. Your journey is going to continue with an 8-week program with live and interactive classes just like today. Week 1 is going to be healthy self-esteem versus unhealthy narcissism, understanding self-esteem. So get an in-depth look at the positive and negative qualities of high and low self-esteem. Plus, the following week will be overcoming self-doubt and self-defeating thoughts. Often the cause of self-doubt is unrealistic expectations. A person being told that he is great, he is the best, he has endless potential can actually make him anxious and doubtful because he knows it's not all true. Learn how to cultivate a more balanced picture of yourself and how to help your children create this healthy picture as well. The following week will be take stock of your character and develop your unique talents. Discover your unique potential with an objective assessment of your talents and your faults. It's important to identify your strengths and your weaknesses, but not be intimidated by either. Then free yourself from victim mode. A healthy and realistic awareness of divine providence is essential to mental well-being. We need to know and acknowledge what we cannot change and understand that in God's plan, nothing will ever go wrong. The following week, we'll discuss reward and punishment. Guilt is the feeling of being less than before, less lovable, less acceptable, less valuable to someone, presently or in the future. So how can we know what God thinks of us? Then we'll discover weathering the seasons of life. Reinvent yourself. In every stage of life, there is a mission waiting for us, something that we can do under the new circumstances. Every new challenge is a new lease on life. So let's discover that together. Finally, in week 7, how do we get beyond ourselves and what will we find there? The future of our collective psychology rests on discovering that deep down inside, we don't have dark hidden needs. We have no needs at all. Even the needs with which we are born, the demands of human existence, are not ours because we don't need to be born. So let's see what we can learn by going beyond ourselves and getting out of just ourselves. And finally, a full Q&A to get all of your questions answered in an anonymous forum. So as you can see, each live class will be on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Israel time. And our first class starts next week, Thursday, July 6th. But don't worry if you can't attend a live class, a recording will be available to you in your own personal membership area just 24 hours after the live class takes place. And it's available to you for as long as you need to listen to or download at your convenience. Plus, you'll also get Hashem Needs You, a 30-day transformation system. You are not alone. Hashem needs you. In this 4-part series, you will discover your personal truths and begin using your own unique gifts to know and love Hashem, so that even when the going gets tough and your relationship is tested, you will pass his tests and find your purpose in this world. Plus, why do bad things happen to good people? An insightful 3-part series that examines one of the hardest concepts to cope with, how pain and tragedy can actually make you stronger with the right mindset. And finally, you are what you believe. What you believe makes all the difference in the world. Knowledge may be acquired from life and from experience, but faith is bigger than life. It tells us what to make of our experiences. Get your faith in order through this 13-part series by Rabbi Friedman. All of your bonuses are going to be available as immediate downloads, so you can listen to those at your convenience anytime and anywhere. As you can see, Rabbi Friedman will be walking you through a full journey beyond yourself, helping you forge a stronger sense of faith, trust, and awareness. You'll have one-on-one support throughout this program, and will have the unique opportunity to get your personal questions answered, not only throughout the 8 weeks, but that full 1-hour Q&A will be spent specifically to make sure that we can answer everybody's questions. If you can't make it again to the live session, don't worry. You can go ahead and email your questions in ahead of time, and we'll make sure to get those answered on the line. Most importantly, by investing in yourself now, you'll discover how to stop looking for external validation and find an inner stability to help you through challenging and uncertain times. You'll be mindful of your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, know your vulnerabilities as well as your strengths, and let your healthy side breathe. Avoid self-sabotage and regain your motivation and drive by recognizing your gifts, talents, and self-worth. And overcome self-doubt and self-defeating thoughts and open the door to connect more deeply with the most important people in your life. We have never offered a series like this before, but we listened to our members' requests. So for the very first time, we've created an all-encompassing program alongside a one-of-a-kind mentor. Plus, to make it accessible to everyone, we are also offering payment plan options when you register. So you can become a member today and get the special discount for attending. For just $397, you can join Rabbi Friedman for an 8-week series. Plus, you'll get Hashem Needs You, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People, and What You Are What You Believe. All for just one payment of $397, or when you click to register, you can choose a payment plan option that best fits your needs and break those payments up so that the financial stress does not overwhelm you. I'm going to go ahead right now into your chat box and put the link to join. It's www.jewishworkshops.com/self-esteem, one word. And when you go ahead and register, please just come back to the chat box and write your name and the words "I'm in." I'd love to be able to welcome you. We have limited space available, so when you come back, let me know so that I can see how many more spots are taken. And if you're having any difficulties or trouble registering, sometimes when so many people go to the site all at once, it can take a little bit of time, it can be slow. But if you're having any technical difficulties, please just come right back to the chat box, put your name and your telephone number in, and I will have somebody give you a call as soon as possible so that we can get you registered and secure your spot in this full series. As you're registering also, I will go ahead and get to some questions. There were several hundred questions that came in ahead of time. Thank you for everyone who participated and sent in your questions. But if you have some questions for Rabbi Friedman while we're on the line, please feel free to put those into the question box as well. And before I get started with those questions, okay, let me go ahead back here. All of the live classes, I'm sorry, Sarah, I didn't get to that. All of the live classes are going to be Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Israel time. But again, if you can't make it to those live classes, if that's in the middle of the day for you or not a good time for you, you will have recordings to all of the classes available to you in your own special membership area. You can listen to those and download them at your convenience. And of course, throughout the program, as I mentioned, the one-on-one support will include, if you aren't able to make those live classes, you'll be able to send in your questions so that we can make sure that those get addressed on the line, whether you're able to make it there or not. Okay, great. So let me get to some of the questions that came in. Rabbi Friedman, can you actually, before we get to this first question, can you just give us a little bit of a hint as to, or a sneak peek as to what we're going to get into next week? People are wondering what, how the journey is going to continue right away on that first class of healthy self-esteem versus unhealthy narcissism.
Basically, without giving it all away, there's an addiction to ourselves that cripples us and leads to other addictions probably as well. But the addiction to self, which will cause either high self-image or low self-image naturally, without input from others. What do we do with that addiction to self? In other words, how do we free ourselves from the burden of self so that we can look at ourselves objectively, coolly, intelligently, and without pain? Because most people, when they look at themselves, there's discomfort. You know how people say when you show them a picture, they say, oh, that doesn't look like me. Or you hear a tape of yourself, that doesn't sound like me. Or you get on a scale and you say, no, this can't be. Why are we so sensitive to ourselves that we can't be just comfortable? So here's the point. Good self-image, low self-image are both too much about self. That's what we need to explore.
Great.
After that, we will talk about. After that, we will talk about how much of me is my fault, and how much of me is simply the design. I didn't make myself. So if I find that there are things about myself I don't like, well, nobody asked me. I wasn't in on the planning. And so, yeah, there are things that are just me without my approval. What do I do with that? In other words, how do I accept what I can't change? Then we got to talk about the experiences in life. Why are things happening to me? Why don't things happen for me? What's happening with my fate? How am I supposed to handle that? Who's running the show when I'm not in charge? Who's controlling the things I can't control? And how should I think of that? How should I feel about that? Because I can't control. There's so many things I can't control. I'm out of control, in fact, most of the time. So who is in control? And how am I supposed to accept that or live with that? It's another thing we need to do. So there is a lot. And then, of course, we got to get to the punchline, which is, do I really need anything at all? Are my needs really necessary and as burdensome as they feel? Isn't there a part of me that is bigger than my problem? Bigger than my issue? If I could get to the big me, not the high self-image me, the part of me that doesn't need a high self-image and doesn't accept a low self-image because it's too much about me, and there's a me that is bigger than all of it. What is that? And what will that do for us? I think it'll bring in a new world, a whole new world. I mean, talk about war. How do we put an end to war? When will wars finally end? War does not exist in the abstract. War comes from people. People need to fight for their existence, for their survival, for their superiority, for their mastery of the world. All of these things, what motivates that? And is it necessary? Or some people think there will always be wars. That means we're never going to change. There's nothing more to us than what we've seen so far. Come on, there's got to be. And I think we're ready. We're ready to go on to that bigger self. And in that bigger self, of course, there's no war. Of course, there's no war. Totally unnecessary. There isn't even jealousy. There's no competition. The bigger self, it's amazing. And it's not mystical. It's our true, natural self that we've been trying to get to through psychology, psychoanalysis, and all sorts of disciplines, including religion. Haven't gotten there. We haven't gotten there. But we now know that we need to get there. And if you join us, we'll figure out how.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and get to some of these questions coming in. I just want to welcome our newest members. Welcome EP and welcome JN. It's so great to have you. And welcome Chaya. So great. Welcome David. Welcome Devora. Great. It's so exciting to see all of these new members and everyone coming back and telling me that you're in. If you don't want to put your full first name, you can again put your initials and just come back and let us know when you have already registered. Again, if you're having any difficulties technically or have some questions, need help registering, please just put your name and your telephone number right into the question box so that we can get somebody on the phone with you to help you secure your spot. Okay, Rabbi Friedman, we had a question come in. I feel replaceable. I have no spouse and no kids, and while I have a job and good friends, I just feel like anyone could step into my role at any time and I wouldn't really be missed.
Well, that is so honest. And it's so true. It's so true that we want to be loved, we want to be famous, we want to be great. And we miss the one thing that we really need, and that is to be needed. The question you're asking is, why am I necessary? That is such a brave question and such a good question. Good meaning a moral question. There are certain questions that lead us to a better place, and some questions just discourage us. This question, where do I fit in? Why am I necessary? Can't I easily be replaced by somebody else? That is a very moral question. Because what you're saying is, am I dispensable to the creator, to the plan, to the universe? Why would you ask that? Because you're not trying to be important to yourself. You want to know whether you're significant to the world, to the creator, to the vast eternal plan for which the whole world was created. And in that big plan, do you really need to be there, or can't others do the same, maybe even better? Great question. The answer is only God knows how valuable and how essential every individual is. And it's good that we don't know, because if we did, we would become very arrogant. So it's enough to know your creator needs you. How that's possible? Little old me? Really? He needs me? Hard to imagine. Yes, it is. It is. It's hard to imagine. Because he's infinite and he's perfect, and I'm tiny and I'm useless. And yet, for me, he would have created the whole world. For one human being, with all their faults, he would have created the whole world. It's true. Don't understand it? Good. That means you're humble. But know that it's true, because it is. You have to have an infinite imagination, the way God does, to find the value in a tiny, finite human being. So human beings can sit around saying, I don't see what one life is so important. You know, we have 7 billion people. We could do with one less, thin the herd, you know, get rid of some people. They're taking up too much space. We can get very cynical and very callous, because we don't appreciate the infinite value of a finite, tiny human being. But God does. See, for a human being, I can say, you know, this is too petty for me. One human being is not exciting enough or important enough for me to get all involved and bent out of shape over. But if I can save mankind, whoa, big project. If I could save the planet, that's exciting. One human being, oh, you know, big deal. And of course, that has to apply to me too. I'm one human being. How exciting is that? A human being is an entire universe. 10 people is not much more important than one. And 1,000,000 people is not more sacred, or 1,000,000 lives is not more sacred than one life. How does that make sense? Only to an infinite creator. Only to someone who is too big to lose interest in what is small. Does that make sense? When you're just big, then you lose interest in what is small. But when you are truly big, then the small is as important as the big. So to God, nothing is too big. To God, nothing is too small. He's God. So you can be important to him, as important as 1,000,000 people or 7 billion people. Yes, you can, because to him numbers don't matter. You matter. Why do you matter? Don't ask too many questions. Somebody says, I love you, accept it. Don't analyze. He needs you. He created you. He's kept you alive. He keeps an eye on you. Take it serious. Not take yourself serious. Take it serious. Very healthy. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. I actually have someone just wrote in a follow-up. How can you trust if you feel so lonely?
How can you trust what? That you're valuable?
I would assume so, but hopefully she'll write in and clarify that. RS, if you can just write in and clarify trust in what, then we will go ahead and finish up that answer. In the meantime, let me go ahead and just welcome our brand new members. And again, I am seeing some people putting in their phone numbers that they're having a little bit of difficulty. So please come back. I don't want you to get discouraged if you are having trouble registering on your own. Please just put your name and your telephone number right back in here into the question box so that we can get to you. So welcome, Daniela, and welcome, Yael. And welcome, Sharon. Wonderful to have all of you as well. So she wrote back in, how can you trust Hashem when you feel so lonely?
The previous Rebbe said that every time you cry, every time you sigh, even though you're crying over a physical pain or a physical loss, human loss, every tear and every regret carries a certain amount of tshuva. You're actually repenting. You're not thinking about it consciously, but every tear and every cry and every sigh is an expression of the godly soul seeking godliness. Feeling lonely is, of course, a human condition, and not a very happy one, not a very pleasant one. But in every loneliness that we feel concerning other people or society, there's a certain amount of yearning for godliness that is expressed in that loneliness. So if you're feeling lonely and you're questioning how you can trust God, if you're feeling lonely, meaning disconnected from a relationship, how does the other party of the relationship feel? If you don't feel connected, can the other party feel connected? If you don't feel connected to God, can God feel connected to you? Or in different words, if you're lonely, doesn't that mean that he is too? If you're not communicating, doesn't that mean that he's not hearing from you? So aren't there two parties here, and they're both suffering because the relationship is not what it could be and what it should be? So feeling lonely and therefore not trusting God means that you're lonely for a relationship with him and you don't see that happening. The fact that a human being can feel the discomfort of separation from God is an amazingly holy thing. So we are all in exile. It is hard to see God's hand in our lives. It's hard to feel God's concern and God's devotion and God's interest and God's protection when things are so cloudy and everything is so hidden and mysterious. So it's hard to get through all the obstructions and get to the truth. But listen to this. Is it possible that you are lonely for something that you never had? Is it possible to be homesick if there's no such thing as home? Can you be suffering for something that doesn't really exist at all? That can't be. So if you're lonely, it means that there is someone else that you're connected to, and you're not feeling that connection, which leaves you feeling lonely. So if you become a little more active in that relationship, not trying to create a feeling that isn't there, do more. Get engaged in the relationship. Make a deal with God. If I do a mitzvah for you, the mitzvah you ask for, will you let me know that you got it? If I send you a postcard, will you confirm that it arrived? That you're really listening and you're reading what I write to you? So do a mitzvah, increase a mitzvah, improve a mitzvah, with the idea that that will create a greater channel for communication so that you'll start to feel connected and not disconnected You'll start to feel like you're involved with a living God, not with an absent God. Try it. It works.
Thank you so much. I really hope that answered your question, and that was a beautiful answer. I know it answered a lot of my questions, so thank you. Before we get into some other questions, and I see that there are several coming in right now, I want to go ahead and just remind you, Linda, in answer to your question, there are payment plan options available today. So let me just go over exactly what you're going to be getting again. I know that it seems the price can seem a little high, but there are payment plan options. You don't need to pay all $397 at once today. When you click on the link jewishworkshops.com/self-esteem, it will take you to a page with all of the information that we went over. It'll show you all of the classes. It'll show you all of the bonus materials that you're getting. And when you click to register, you'll go straight to an order form, which will give you options for payments so that you do not need to pay all at once. You can pay over a period of time and still enjoy all of the classes and be part of the community. Let me go back here, as I mentioned. So after each class will take place on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Israel time. After all of the 8 weeks, after 7 weeks, you'll get that 8th week of Q&A. Plus, the bonus classes are all going to be available to you in your personal membership area as pre-recorded sessions, so you can listen to and download those anytime at your convenience and listen to them anytime and anywhere. That includes the 30-day transformation system, Hashem Needs You. And I think that we actually just, Rabbi Friedman just spoke beautifully about, creating that deeper relationship with Hashem, understanding, loving, and having those intimate conversations. So you'll definitely be able to learn more and gain more from this particular set. Plus, why do bad things happen to good people? Another insightful 3-part series that examines one of the hardest concepts to cope with. And finally, a 13-part series on You Are What You Believe, which again will just help build your faith in Hashem. So I will put that link back into the chat box for you. I do want to go ahead and welcome our another new member, Basia. And welcome, BL. Lovely to have both of you. I'm putting the link back here and then getting to some additional questions that are coming in. Rabbi Friedman. Here we go. I'm searching for purpose in life for many years. How can I really find it and set goals for myself when I can't make up my mind as to what I really want or don't want?
Well, that's a very individual question. If we can't make up our minds, it's because we either have too much information or we don't have enough information. So I'm not sure which in this case, which the problem is. It is very, very helpful and highly advisable that every person should have 2 or 3 friends who will resolve doubts for you. So you talk to your friends and you say, this is my question, which way should I go? And whatever they tell you, that's what you do. You don't argue, you don't debate it with them, you simply take their advice and you get unstuck. So whenever there's a real conundrum and you can't go one way or the other, you break that by consulting with 3 friends. They don't have to be the most brilliant people in the world, but God will give you the answer through them. Trust it. Today happens to be the 3rd of Tammuz, Gimel Tammuz, and the Chabad world is observing the yahrzeit of the Rebbe, 23rd yahrzeit. And it's the Rebbe who revealed this potential in human beings, or this nature in human beings, that takes us beyond all of our limitations. The Rebbe saw a world that is very futuristic, and he saw how to get there. And he knew that it was up to us to do it. He can't do it for us. And so he gave us the guidelines, he gave us the inspiration, he gave us the excitement, the anticipation of this whole new way of being and whole new way of living and serving God in a maximal way. So it's amazing that this came out on the day of Gimel Tammuz, and we're actually talking about these new insights that he introduced into the world. And of course, he also personified them. When you think about how can one human being, one Jew, after the Holocaust, have such an impact on the world, it really doesn't seem possible. And yet he did. And he convinced us that we all need to do the same. Every one of us can have an impact on the world, and not by running around screaming from mountaintops. He didn't run around and he didn't scream. He just focused on what's true, and then nothing stands in your way. So let's do it. Let's get with it.
Thank you. Okay, as we're wrapping up here, we'll get to a couple more questions. So I definitely urge you, if you have any other questions about the program, or if you have questions you'd like Rabbi Friedman to answer, please go and put those into the question box now. If you are having any difficulties, again, once we close up the webinar, unfortunately, we won't have any of your information. So if you need some help, please put your name and your telephone number in right away so that we can have somebody give you a call and help you register now. Rabbi Friedman, one of the questions that came in before the class was how to stop comparing myself to others in my professional life as well as in my personal life. On an intellectual level, I know that each person is created by God for a specific purpose, and each person is given the exact tools he needs to fulfill this purpose. However, knowing this on an intellectual level still does not seem to be able to stop me from comparing myself to others.
And when you compare yourself to others, what do you find? That you are better than them, not as good as them, equal. What do you find? What's fascinating? You can use this constructively. By all means, compare yourself to others, but gain from it, benefit from it. When you compare yourself to others and you find yourself a little less than, well, good. That should motivate you to do a little more. If you find that you are not as good as them, well, then get jealous and let that motivate you to do more. In other words, comparing yourself to others may or may not be a good thing. It depends on how you use it. Use it to your advantage. In fact, use everything to your advantage. Everything you do and everything you think and everything you read and everything you learn should help you improve and grow and inspire you. So use it. Don't sit there trying to not compare yourself to others. That's frustrating. So if you find yourself comparing, then good. Do it constructively. Use it well. Benefit from it. We all compare ourselves to some degree. Nobody lives in a bubble. We're very aware of people around us. And the first thing we notice, this one is taller, this one is shorter. This one is not so smart, this one is smarter. So of course we compare. How can you not? Of course, some people get obsessed about it. But even if you're obsessing about it, use it to your advantage. Everything has a purpose. Even comparing yourself to others. So if you find that others are impressive, try to be like them. in something. I don't mean become a different person. Be yourself, but gain some benefit, some insight, some inspiration from people who are greater than you. You're not meant to be the greatest. You're meant to grow. As long as you're growing, there's nothing better.
Excellent.
One
Thank
more?
you so much. Yeah, we have one more question. As a wife of 28 years to someone with a low self-esteem, I'm conflicted sometimes how to best help my husband. I cannot give him a sense of self-worth and also cannot build his self-esteem if he does not do that for himself. Any ideas?
Essentially, that is true. If he doesn't do it for himself, it won't really work. But you can either be very helpful or you can be very destructive. So be careful what you say and make sure that it always helps him get to where he needs to go. You can't do it for him, but you can certainly help. So notice his strengths, notice his good points, make a remark about it. Don't give up. One little compliment for a person who has low self-esteem, one good compliment can make his week. So take advantage of it. There is something you can do. And when you do it, it's fantastic.
Thank you. I want to go ahead and just welcome all our brand new members. It's wonderful to have all of you. I look forward to seeing you next Thursday for our very first class. If you still have questions, please feel free to put your name and telephone number right into the chat box. We will give you a call shortly. I want to thank everyone for coming. Rabbi Friedman, if we could just leave everyone who's still here with us on the line, if we can leave them with one thing to think about. We actually just got a comment right in the chat box now. How can we rise above this pain? You know, we spoke so deeply about the pain that we're all going through. How can we rise above that and still grow? And how can we leave today with people who are still on the fence, you know, not sure if this is the right step for them?
Well, I'm not sure that we're ready for the punchline yet. There's so much more to talk about. But as a rule of thumb, we have our needs, and they can be very painful. They can be very discouraging. But we also are needed. So my own needs compared to the people who need me and what they need from me, or what God needs from me, what the community needs from me, really overwhelms the needs that I have for myself. So if I don't seem to be doing very well getting my own needs met, maybe I'm being told from above that right now I should be taking care of somebody else's needs, and that my needs will be taken care of automatically. So if I'm trying, if I do what I need to do to take care of my needs, and it's not working, maybe it's because that's not what my efforts should be directed at. Maybe I'm taking on a mission or a job that I'm not meant to do. Maybe I'm not meant to solve my needs. Maybe I'm here to solve your needs. And if I solve your needs, I will feel much better because I did what I was meant to do. That feels good. So as a rule of thumb, anytime you feel a little frustrated because your own needs are not being met, think about who needs you. Look around. Somebody is waiting for a little help from you. And if you do that, you will be successful, which will, of course, help with easing the pain of your own needs. So I need and you need. What should I focus on? I tried focusing on me. It's not working. So maybe I should try focusing on you. Maybe I can do more for you than I can do for myself. And maybe that's my purpose in life. So there are options. Don't get stuck. Don't keep battering your head against the wall trying to solve your problem that doesn't want to go away. It will go away if you succeed at something else. So look at the world with a bigger picture, with a broader scope. There are other problems in the world as well, and they may be there for you to solve. So don't get too myopic. My problem to the exclusion of everything else? No. We all have problems. Sometimes I can solve other people's problems easier than I can solve my own. And sometimes my own problems will be solved by somebody other than me while I'm busy solving problems or taking care of needs of the creator, of others. So again, I need and I am needed. Sometimes I should focus on what I need. Sometimes I should focus on what I'm needed for. Try both and see where you're more successful.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Friedman. Thanks for spending your time with us. We look forward to the full series coming up starting next week. And thank you for everyone who joined in today. I'm going to go ahead and leave the webinar open for just a couple minutes. If you still need to put your name and telephone number in, you'll be able to do so. You won't hear anything, but I'll keep it open just so that we can collect your information and give you a call. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.